And today we have the kind of highlight of Business Ethics Week. We have Rich Meeusen, and great friend of ours. He comes to my class at least once a semester, participates in Business Ethics Week, and does so many other things for the university. And today he actually started getting involved in the College of Arts and Communication. We'll make sure he doesn't get too involved there so that we don't lose him. But just a little bit about himself. He graduated from Whitewater a few years ago with a BBA in accounting.
A few years ago. That was kind of you. Yeah.
Wow,
76.
76, yeah. And he,
Our nation's centennial. Or bicentennial. Bicentennial.
200, that's right, yeah. So he joined the audit division of Milwaukee office of Arthur Andersen and received his CPA in 1978. In 1988, he became VP of Finance and Treasurer of Zenith Sintered Products, and basically a powder metal parts manufacturer located in Germantown. He then went on to get an MBA at Northwestern at the Kellogg Graduate School of Management. Joined Badger Meter in 1995 as VP of Finance and then CFO, and in 2002 he was elected as President and CEO and was elected Chairman in 2004. So he's very involved in terms of social responsibility and in terms of volunteering and so on. He serves on the board of Goodwill Industries of Southeastern Wisconsin, Wisconsin Manufacturers and Commerce, Metropolitan Milwaukee Association of Commerce. He's president of the Milwaukee County Council Boy Scouts of America and a member of the Greater Milwaukee Committee. I thought you were going to sit.
No, I wasn't. No, that's okay. Offering a chair to one of the ladies who came in.
And also he serves on the advisory board of the business schools at both University of Wisconsin-Whitewater, so here, and also Milwaukee. So welcome, Rich. I won't take much more of your time, and thanks again.
Yeah, where I was raised, you always offer chairs to the ladies, but that's okay, guys. You do what you think is right. So as Praveen said, I am the chairman, president, CEO of Badger Meter. He's covered a little bit of my background, and just so you catch it, 76 Whitewater graduate, worked for Arthur Andersen, then I worked in private industry. 17 years ago, went to Badger Meter as CFO, and 11 years ago became CEO. Badger Meter is a 107-year-old company. I'm the 5th CEO, so it's a company that doesn't change very often. Badger Meter is a company that is, 2/3 of our business is selling water meters, the kind you'd find in your basement or in this building, and we're the largest maker of water meters in North America. We have about 1,500 employees around the world, because the other 1/3 of our business is all kinds of industrial flow meters measuring beer, chemicals, milk, everything else. We make meters that, we make the meter that goes in your Couric coffee maker to tell it when to stop filling the cup. We also make meters that go in Predator drone aircraft that measure the fuel and report back on what the fuel consumption is as it's flying to blow up some terrorist. We make meters that I can stand in. We make meters of all different shapes and sizes. We have 8 plants in 5 countries around the world, so I travel quite a bit. Publicly traded, we're on the New York Stock Exchange, so it's a pretty major business. One of the interesting things about Badger Meter is that every time we hire somebody, I spend a half an hour talking to that employee. Now, in most cases, those employees have to wait till I get to their country. Sometimes I need an interpreter. I speak a little Spanish and German, but I've never bothered to learn Czech. It sounds like you're coughing up a fur ball. I can't handle that language. So I always have an interpreter there. And then in Asia, too, I use interpreters. But I always meet with my new employees, and I always talk to them, and the primary thing I talk to them about is ethics. Now, it's interesting because companies didn't care much about ethics until we got to the Enron. There was a period of time in America where we got hit as a business community with Enron, WorldCom, HealthSouth, just a large number of companies just went under very quickly, all because of ethical violations, because they were cooking the books, they were doing things wrong. And so in America, everybody said, well, we need to focus on ethics. And all the college campuses started having ethics week and ethics classics, ethics training, and all the CEOs in their annual reports that they write their letters to their shareholders every year started explaining why their company is so very ethical, okay? And then it died away, okay? Because ethics comes into vogue and goes out of vogue. And right now, that's not the hot button anymore. Shareholders say, I don't want to hear about what an ethical company you are. What I want to hear about is, anybody want to take a guess what the hot topic is among businesses today? what is really good to stand up and say, this is what we're all about? Sustainability. Yep, the environment. Exactly. So now when you read the annual reports of all these companies, they don't talk about ethics anymore. They talk about sustainability. They talk about how green they are and how they're doing wonderful things for the environment, because that's what people care about. Now, my prediction is that within a few years, we're going to have a few more big blow-ups. There's going to be a few companies where they're going to find out they're cooking the books, the whole thing's going to go under, and everybody's going to say, oh, we got to focus back on ethics. But a lot of the campuses have said, screw the ethics programs, we're now on to sustainability, because that's what business wants to hear about. And they've trashed their ethics programs, and they've moved on to sustainability. I'm very pleased that my alma mater, that Whitewater here, has continued to focus on ethics, because it's something we can't lose track of. At Badger Meter, 107 years ago, our founders decided that one of the things that was going to make us unique as a company was we were going to hold ourselves to a higher ethical standard than other companies. Now, companies tend to reflect their customer base, and the culture in a company tends to reflect its customer base. One woman at one of my speeches here asked me one of the best questions I was ever asked by a college student. She said, you know, you go to work for a company, and they tell you figure out the company's culture. That's the most important thing. Because we hire everybody based on their experience and their education, and we fire everybody because they're not a cultural fit. And it's very hard to evaluate culture in an interview. And you too want to make sure that you're fitting into the culture, so you're supposed to figure out the culture. She said, but you read the annual reports, you go to the websites, these companies all look alike. You can't tell the difference. How do you figure out what a company's culture is? And I said to her, well, that's relatively easy. Find out what people get fired for. Because ultimately, that's where the rubber meets the road. If you find out what people get fired for, that's the definition of the company's culture. And you know, I worked 12 years for Arthur Andersen. At Arthur Andersen, you were expected to work 60 to 70 hours a week during busy season, and if you weren't working that, you were going to be out the door. That was their culture. They used to say, we work hard, play hard. That was the culture at Arthur Andersen. It was this high customer comes first, client service culture, and you put in the hours that were necessary to serve your client. At Badger Meter, we built our culture based on ethics. I have 9 vice presidents around the world. I fired one for violating ethics. Sent him packing. The easiest way to get fired at Badger Meter is to violate ethics. I had a 3rd shift supervisor who wanted to be a 1st shift supervisor. And he felt the best way to do that would be to have the best throughput of any shift. And if he was the #1 every day, every week for his shift, we would surely promote him to 1st shift supervisor. And the way he did that was by falsifying the records to indicate that meters that did not pass the accuracy test actually had passed the accuracy test. I got a phone call on the Ethics Hotline in my office. We investigated. We found out he was doing it. We fired him. So that's the difference. And that's where we really push our culture. Now, why do we do that? Well, our founders saw something. They realized that we sell water meters to municipal water departments. We sell to the Whitewater Water Department. So we're selling to government officials. If a buyer at Kohl's Corporation gets caught taking a bribe to buy some cheap clothes and put them out on the rack, that buyer will probably lose his or her job, okay? And maybe the person who paid the bribe will lose his or her job. In my world, it's felony. People go to prison. In my world, we sell to government officials, and if somebody bribes somebody, people will go to prison. And people say to me, what keeps me awake at night? I run a 107-year-old company. I got 1,500 families depending on the decisions I make. And the one thing that keeps me awake at night is if my brand would get damaged. Because nothing can bring down a company faster than brand damage. And the best way to damage the brand of a company that sells to government officials is to have some sort of ethical violation where those government officials say, we can't afford to deal with this company anymore. So at a very high level, that's why we focus on ethics. And that's why at Badger Meter, ethics isn't something, well, it was popular, we had it in before, and now we don't. We moved on to sustainability. We'll go back to ethics some point. It comes in and out. We are constantly talking about ethics. Every new employee, I sit down and I say, we are an ethical company, and here's why. And if somebody asks you to do something unethical, this is the Ethics Hotline. You call it, I answer it. Okay? And you know what? If you want to blow the whistle on me, the recording on the Ethics Hotline will give you the phone number of the head of our audit committee on the board of directors. And you can call him and blow the whistle on me. So we have a path for reporting absolutely everything. So that's at a high level Badger Meter. But I'm going to bring ethics down to a very personal level for you, okay? Because every one of you probably thinks I'm ethical. you know what? Mr. Meeusen, you hire me to work in your business. I will not pay bribes. I will not accept bribes, okay? Those are not the ethical problems you're going to deal with. You're not going to hit those. The ethical problems you're going to deal with are much more the shades of gray. Let's explore one, just for fun, okay? What's your name?
Jared.
Jared, what's your name?
Brian.
Brian, okay. Jared and Brian come to work for me at Badger Meter. Jared and Brian are best friends, okay? Are you? No. You don't even know each other, okay. You got to really pretend you like him, okay? All right, so Jared and Brian are best friends. They've gone to school together, they work together, they hang out for beer after work, they really enjoy each other's company, best friends. And one day, Brian says to Jared, you know what, it's 3 o'clock, I got tickets to a basketball game, I'm going to leave. If the boss comes by, tell him I'm down on the shipping docks, okay? And he leaves. Now, I come up to Jared and I go, do you know where Brian is? You ratted him out. You threw your best friend under the bus. He didn't even hesitate to throw his best friend under the bus. Wow. Some friend you are. That was quick. You didn't even hesitate, did you?
You're right.
Wow. Amazing. How many of you would do what he did? I'm just curious. A few would? How many would make up something else? Somebody else want to tell me what you'd say? What would you say? You said you wouldn't rat the guy out like he did.
I would say he's on the shipping docks.
You'd say he's on the shipping docks. You would lie to me. You would just a bald-faced lie to your boss without hesitation. You're a lie. Okay, wow. Okay. Anybody else got anything in between they want to take a shot at? I'm always interested in I always call them the Catholic answer and the Protestant answer. And I'm not referring to the religions, okay, per se. What I say is the Catholic answer is, well, yeah, I lied, and it was wrong, and I'll go to confession and get my soul washed, and I'll be fine, okay? Not a big deal, okay? I'll lie, and as long as I don't die between now and then, I'm still going to go to heaven because the priest is going to wash my soul clean. So that's the Catholic answer. The Protestant answer is, I didn't technically lie, okay? They always find some way to say, you know, the Protestant answer would be, I don't know where he is. Really? You don't know where he is? Well, maybe he got to the shipping docks, maybe he didn't. Maybe he got to the game or was in a car accident. I don't technically know where he is at this point in time, at this exact moment. Protestants are really good at finding the way around, you know, all these rules. So that's why the Protestants formed their own religion. So there's a lot of different ways around this. But here's what I would submit to you. Okay? What I would submit to you is your mistake in this situation, because I don't like either answer. I don't like throwing my best friend under the bus. I don't like lying to the boss, right? So the mistake you made was what? Do you have any idea what your mistake was? You should have never gotten yourself into that position. When he said, I'm going to the game, but if the boss comes by, tell him on the shipping dock. What you should have turned to him and said, do not put me in a position where I got to lie. Okay? I don't want to, if you want to get him to walk away from your desk, I don't want to know where you're going. Don't tell me and tell me to lie to somebody else. You do whatever you want, and I'm just going to say I have no idea where you went. Now, you make a decision. You can go to the shipping docks. You can go to the game. I don't want to know. Then you can honestly look at me and say, I don't know where the guy is. Right? And you got a clear conscience. Don't let somebody draw you into that situation. Those are the kinds of ethical situations you're going to find yourself in. Those are the really, really tricky ones. You know, somebody asked me, well, can I photocopy my tax return at work? What do you think? You're saying no? The dean says no.
I don't want to know.
Okay.
You know, when it came to ethics, I'm going to take off my coat here. When it came to ethics, I sought long and hard for a logical progression. In fact, I was talking to the dean at lunch about how what my thought process is, and sometimes I reach these conclusions and try to decide whether or not I have a logical bridge to get there, or was this just a leap of faith. And I thought long and hard about this. And when you look at ethics, there are a lot of different ways of looking at it. When you're trying to define what is right and wrong, okay? Some people say, and when a CEO stands up and says, we are an ethical company, all right? What I love to say is, well, what does that mean? What do you mean by you're an ethical company? You'd be amazed at the answers you get. One of the answers I get is, well, we're an ethical company because we don't do anything illegal. Well, if you're letting lawyers tell you what's right and wrong, you're an idiot. Because the law is not designed to tell you what's right and wrong. The law is designed to make society work. It has nothing to do with what's right and wrong. It has nothing to do with justice. You ever deal with the law, you'll find that out real fast, okay? It's simply designed to make society work. Every day, you guys do things that are illegal but ethical. And every day, you guys do things that are legal but unethical. Right? Should I prove it to you? Okay? You've probably all, in sometime in the last few days, done something that is absolutely illegal. How many of you have ever driven over the posted speed limit? Right? We all drive over the posted speed limit. It's illegal, isn't it? It's against the law. Why do you do it? Well, then why don't you, well, so if the speed limit is 30, what do you drive? All right, why aren't you driving 80? You want to get there even faster. Well, what? It's too dangerous. Okay, so you don't go 80 because it's too dangerous. If you felt it wasn't dangerous, you'd be flying. Right. To hell with the cops behind the sign. You don't care. Let them write you a ticket. You're not going to pay it anyway. You're a deadbeat, right? Why else might you not speed besides too dangerous? Which I just told you. You might get a ticket. You might get caught. Okay, that's another reason. But why go 40? Why go 40 and a 30?
Why not?
Well, you've decided that's not dangerous.
It's not, no.
But the guy who posted the sign said it is. The guy who posted the sign said 30 is the safe speed. You've decided he's wrong.
Yeah.
You decided he's a moron. You've never met him, and you've decided he's a moron. Well, no, I'm trying to get an answer here. Help me. Give me your words. Use your words.
I go 40 because it's not that dangerous.
In your opinion?
It's more efficient.
Okay. And it's more efficient. And there might be another reason. When you're on the expressway and the speed limit is 55, where do you go?
60.
All right. And are you worried about getting pulled over?
No.
Why not?
Cops only pull you over if you go over.
There you go. The cops won't enforce it. You can go a little bit over the speed limit, the cops won't enforce it. So what has happened here? Society has said, this is the law, this is the speed limit, but we'll let you go over it. That's what society has said. And society has said, it's illegal. You are speeding, but it's okay. So every day we do things that are illegal, but society says it's okay. I can call a man into my office, and I can, after 30 years of working at Badger-Meter, I can fire him because I don't like the color tie he wore today. And I can fire him with no severance and with no notice, and I can send him packing. And it's illegal. There's no law in Wisconsin that Wisconsin is a right-to-work state. Not a right-to-work. It's an employment at will state. I wish it was a right-to-work. It's an employment at will state, okay, which means I can fire him for anything other than one of the protected statuses, which is race, religion, sexual preference, or physical disability, and age if they're over 40. But I can fire him for anything other than that. I can fire him because I don't like the color of his tie. Wisconsin, in the state of Wisconsin, you do not have to pay severance. People think severance is some kind of law. There's no law. Send him home, and I can do it. Perfectly legal. Is it ethical? It's not the right thing to do. I would never do that. That would just be the wrong thing to do. So my point is, you can't look to the law to tell you what's right and wrong. The law doesn't work. So where else do you go? Okay, well, I tried going to religion. I did. People said, WWJD, right? That said, that's your guideline. That can be your guidepost. What would Jesus do? Okay? Somebody had a bumper sticker I saw that said, what would Jesus drive? Okay? And he's driving along in his little Prius. And my reaction is, you arrogant. I'll tell you what Jesus would drive. Jesus would drive the biggest freaking Humvee he could find for two reasons. One is the roads in Jerusalem sucked, okay? And the second reason is he went everywhere with his posse of 12 drinking buddies. They're not going to fit in the back seat of a Prius, okay? So he's got a big Humvee. Maybe he's got a stretch F500 or something, Ford 500 or something. I mean, he's got a big freaking truck tooling along right over the water.
You know that.
What?
It's being taped.
I know it's being taped. It's okay. Yeah. I don't go to church anymore ever since that incident when I went in there, the walls started bleeding. I try to stay away from churches. So they say the golden rule, Rich, the golden rule. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. And I honestly, for quite a while in my life, believed the golden rule. I thought that was a good rule. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Then I ran into a guy named G. Gordon Liddy. Has anybody ever heard of G. Gordon Liddy? Wow, how quickly they forget. G. Gordon Liddy was a central figure in the Watergate Scandal, which as a young man, that had a huge impact on me. The Watergate Scandal went on just when I was a senior in high school and a freshman in college. And G. Gordon Liddy was an operative, a former CIA operative, who engineered the Watergate Scandal. And Liddy said to Mitchell, who was the Attorney General, who was part of the Nixon's cover-up of Watergate. You do know what Watergate is. You've heard of that, right? Oh my God, they don't know what Watergate is. President Richard Milhouse Nixon hired some people to break into the Democratic National Party Committee headquarters and plant bugs so he could hear what their campaign strategy was so that he could get reelected, okay? And his reelection committee really engineered it. Unfortunately, all the burglars got caught. While they were being arraigned, they were keeping their mouths shut, but they were demanding hush money. Nixon had to find some way to funnel hush money to them, so he got, and he had G. Gordon Liddy running the whole thing. He got the Attorney General involved. He got all kinds of people involved, paying the hush money down. Eventually, the whole thing blew up on him, and Nixon resigned in 1974. Okay, little history lesson for you guys. G. Gordon Liddy was a fascinating man, because G. Gordon Liddy said, and I heard this interview once, he said to Mitchell, he said, I have failed my president. Tell me what street corner to be on when, and I will be there. Do you know what he meant by that? You know what he meant by that? Because, boy, that had such an impact on me as a young man. He said, tell me what street corner to be on when, and I'll be there. He meant he would stand on the street corner and wait for the drive-by shooting to kill him because he had failed as president and he was willing to die. And here's the problem I have with the golden rule. A man like G. Gordon Liddy says, if I screw up, somebody should kill me. Therefore, in his mind, under the golden rule, he should be able to kill anybody who screws up. The golden rule allows a masochist to be a sadist. All right? It allows somebody who has a warped sense of what's right and wrong to apply that warped sense of what's right and wrong to the rest of the world. It's kind of what drives the mafia to a great extent. They believe what they're doing is right because they're willing to accept it. You know, yes, somebody gets popped if they do something wrong. I accept the fact that I get popped. So I found the golden rule wasn't that golden, and it wasn't a really good answer for me. I looked at the great philosophers. Kant. Thomas Kant spent his life trying to find what he called a moral imperative, an absolute definition of what's right and wrong. Spent his entire life on his deathbed, said, I got nothing. I've worked my whole life on this. I've got nothing. Some people said St. Thomas Aquinas had it right. St. Thomas Aquinas said all morality is absolute. What is right and wrong is always right and wrong in all situations, in all cultures, throughout time. And he had 5 questions, and if you could answer yes to all 5 questions, then what you were doing was moral. If you couldn't answer yes to all 5, then it was immoral, it was unethical. People didn't like that because it was a pretty stern thing, and besides that, they said, well, wait a minute, you know, back in ancient Greece, certain activities were considered moral. The Romans had slaves, but at their time, was that really immoral? You know, I mean, it depends upon where you are in society. So then along came Jean-Paul Sartre, the Frenchman. Jean-Paul Sartre said, no, Thomas Aquinas is wrong. All ethics is not absolute. Ethics all depends upon who you are, where you were raised, what time of, you know, what culture you're in. That's really what ethics depends on. And whether or not something is right or wrong depends upon whether or not your society says it's right or wrong. In some countries, driving over the speed limit may be absolutely wrong. In our country, it's okay to go a few miles over. We don't let you go 40 miles over, but we let you go a few miles over. So it just depends upon where you live. And everybody said, you know, Sartre's got it. John Paul's got it. This is a great answer. This is what we're going to use from now on. And then Sartre went a bridge too far. Sartre said the Nuremberg trials. Do you know what the Nuremberg trials were? After World War II, the Nazis had killed a lot of Jews. We brought them all to trial in Nuremberg, and we convicted them, and we sent them all to prison for life. Well, Sartre said the Nuremberg trials are unethical. You shouldn't be trying these people. They were just doing what they were told, and in their society, it was okay to kill the Jews. And the whole world went, whoa, wait a minute. So my point to you is, mankind has been wrestling with this question of what's right and wrong for a long time. We've been wrestling with this question of what's ethical and unethical. And you think you're going to come to a classroom at Whitewater and get the golden answer. You're going to get an answer that will solve all your questions, that will tell you whether or not you should lie to your boss when he skips out to a basketball game early. You think you're going to find all those answers in a classroom after thousands of years of the greatest thinkers on earth trying to come up with these solutions. They aren't there, and I'm not going to deliver it to you, okay? I can give you some things to think about, but I'm not going to deliver the big answer to you. Now, one thing you might think about is when people say to me, well, Rich, you say Badger Meat is an ethical company. What does that really mean? Well, here's my answer. My answer is If you're willing to walk away from a business opportunity that is profitable and legal, but wrong, you can call yourself ethical. Profitable and legal, but wrong. You know in your heart it's wrong. I'll give you an example. There was a company that installed water meters. We make water meters. We agreed to work together and jointly go to a large city and quote them together on providing the water meters. I would sell them the meters. These guys would install them. We were partners. We didn't sign any contracts. We didn't sign any legal agreements. We just had a handshake saying, let's work together. I went there. I made my presentation. They made their presentation. Afterwards, the head of the water utility came up to me and said, Rich, we really like Badger's meters, but we don't really want those guys doing the installation. Now, I could have thrown those guys under the bus and probably made a lot of sales. But I had ethically said to them I'd work together. My answer was, hey, I brought them to the dance. I take them home from the dance. Probably a concept that's also foreign to you guys, okay? All right. There was a saying when I was a kid, if you took a girl to the dance, you were supposed to go home with her. You didn't ditch your date halfway through. I know this is crazy talk to you guys, okay? But, you know, generally you're supposed to stay with the one you brought to the dance. That's the theory, okay? I'm getting too old for this. These guys don't really get to any of my references anymore. God almighty. I got to update this stuff, you know. I don't even think SpongeBob SquarePants is current enough for you guys. So my point is, if you're willing to walk away from an opportunity that you can do legally, you can do profitably, but you say it's just wrong. I'm not going to do it. It's just wrong. It's legal and profitable for me to not pay a severance to somebody I'm firing, but it's just wrong. I'm not going to do it. That's ethical. That's being ethical as a company. That's what's so important about being ethical. I want to take time to answer questions here, so I don't want to go too long. I want to make sure that I have time to address some of your questions. So, and how long are we supposed to go here?
We have until 3:30.
Oh, we got plenty of time. Okay, I got a lot more, but that's fine. But why don't we see if anybody has any questions at this point that we can talk about? Come on. If you don't, I'll throw out some ethical conundrums for you.
I will ask the same question I asked yesterday to a different person.
Sure.
So, we are only 5.3% of the world right here. Ethics seem to vary per country.
Yep.
As I've encountered few countries, but many more. What do you do with that? What do you do with the simple thing where, well, you've got to bribe the policeman or we're not going to even get through there? What do you do with, well, those types of, I mean, that's...
Well, it's a very good example. I have an office in Mexico City, okay? My office in Mexico City has been trying to grow our sales in Mexico for the last 3 decades and has just been struggling. And I know why they're struggling. Because culturally, it's an acceptable thing that you pay bribes in Mexico. And I don't allow my employees to pay bribes. And I know that, and they know that. And they are.
Like, why am I not succeeding?
They are absolutely operating with one hand tied behind their back. And on the other hand, I could say to them, well, I'm going to make an exception for you guys and let you guys pay bribes, all right? The problem is, if that blows up in the newspaper, it damages my brand. It damages my brand globally. I would rather lose the sales in Mexico than take the risk of the brand damage. It's a decision that every business has to make.
The Mexico business would be 7 times larger than the U.S. business.
Sure would.
You close your office and they move it all to Mexico to pay their bribes. You know, I mean, it's that complicated.
No, I mean, there's no question that my Mexico business would be more if we paid bribes, but we won't do it. Not only that, the U.S. has the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act, which basically says it's illegal to bribe anybody. I remember when they passed the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act, I went over to Germany. And I sat down with my German managers and I said, now we have this new thing, Foreign Corrupt Practices Act. It puts some I mean, I can go to jail if bribes are paid, and it's proven that, it doesn't have to be proven that I knew about the bribes. It just has to be proven that I didn't discourage bribes, and I can go to jail. So I'm explaining to them about it, and I said, you can't pay bribes. And the German manager says to me, Herr Meeusen, we have no problem here because we never bribe government officials. And I said, good. And then I started thinking about what he said. And you know, sometimes there's this language barrier and stuff, and I go, wait. You say it like, you know, you might bribe others. Oh yeah, we bribe everybody, but we don't bribe government officials. And I'm like, you can't bribe anybody, okay? Oh, you're taping this. We never pay bribes, okay? They never bribed anybody. So I mean, you know, there is a cultural problem because in Germany it was like, well, there's nothing wrong with giving a purchasing manager a new set of golf clubs if he buys your products. And actually it happens in America. Okay, I get the call that, gee, we would love to take you to a Packer game, or we'd love to send you some Packer tickets if you buy our crappy product. Okay, it happens all the time in America. And the non-public businesses can actually do that. The public businesses were under much more scrutiny and it's much stricter. But they can actually do that, and we have to constantly fight it. My purchasing managers are not allowed to accept even a cup of coffee from anybody. We're very strict about it. So it is an issue. Other questions? Somebody else has a question. If not, I'll throw some ethical questions out for you. Okay? There's a lot of talk in American business about CEO salaries, and that maybe we should cap CEO salaries in America. We should cap them to maybe 20 times the average pay of the employees, or 10 times the average pay of the employees, 20 times the pay of the lowest employee, all of this kind of stuff. You hear about this all the time, all right? So I'm a CEO of a public company. Last year, my total comp was about $1.6 million. I make somewhere between $1 and $2 million a year. Okay, it's a great freaking gig, let me tell you. I always say I went into business because I believed that if I did that, someday I could become very wealthy, and that somehow that would make me happy. And as it turned out, I was right. I'm happier than hell. I make a lot of money. It's great. So I also bear in mind that someday half of everything I own is going to belong to my daughter's ex-husband. So that's life too. But she's getting married in 2 weeks, so it's on my mind. And there's no prenup. So thought about it. Where the heck was I? Now I lost where I was going. Oh, CEO salaries. Okay, so I get paid a lot of money. I get paid $1 to $2 million a year. In Mexico, I start my employees at about $3 an hour. Average pay is the top pay is about $5 an hour. Okay, so average pay is about $4 an hour. All right. So the question for you is, how is it that I can get up in the morning and when I shave, I don't slit my own freaking throat? Okay, because I'm making all this money and these people down in Mexico are making such little money. So what is your reaction to that? Are CEOs paid too much? Are CEO salaries too high? What is your reaction to that? Somebody's got a reaction. You look like you're thinking about it. Yeah, what do you think?
I think that you had to have a lot more education maybe than some of the people, but I don't know if it's that big of a...
You don't know if it's worth that big a gap. So what your answer is, well, maybe I put in more education, but maybe it's not worth that much of a gap. Would you pay me that kind of money if you were a shareholder of the company? I don't know. Okay, tough questions. Well, let me tell you a story, okay, to make my point. And this is a story about a kid who, at a very young age, found out he was pretty good in a certain sport, okay? He had some basic skills. And so all through grade school and high school, he practiced his sport and honed his skills, all right? And then he went off to college, and in addition to all his studies, he was doing this sport and really getting pretty good at it, pretty good. And then eventually he graduates from college and they put him in the minors. Now the minors are not fun, okay? You're not getting paid very much in the minors. You spend a lot of time on the bus traveling from city to city, so it's not that enjoyable. A lot of late nights. It's not that much fun, but they do it, okay? And why do they do it? Because they're hoping to get into the majors, okay? So this kid spends years in the minors. He's getting better, and you have to understand that, man, while all his friends were out partying in college, he was practicing his sport, all right? While all of his friends were having a good time, he was just practicing, and that got him pretty good. And eventually he gets called up to the majors, big time. Now, he's in the majors. What's the average life in the majors? How long do you think you last in the majors? You can't spend 20 years in the, well, Brett Favre maybe, but the average person doesn't spend 20 years in the majors, am I right? So how long do you think you spend in the majors? What do you think an average life might be in the majors? Pardon? 3 to 5 years? Okay, so maybe 3 to 5 years. He's got 3 to 5 years in the majors. So he's in the majors, and then after that 3 to 5 years, that's it, okay? So while he's in the majors, everybody starts saying, you know, look at what this guy's getting paid. This is, the guy goes out and he's just doing this stuff, and he's getting paid all this money. This doesn't make any sense. He shouldn't get this kind of pay. The question I have for you is, what sport am I talking about? Baseball? Anybody else want to take a guess? Wrong. What? Football? Wrong. Hockey? Wrong. I'm talking about the sport of business. And I'm talking about myself. And I'm talking about the fact that when I was a kid, I was pretty good at analytics, school, that kind of stuff. And when I went off to college here, while all my friends were up binge drinking with you bozos, I was back in my classroom drinking, okay? I'm talking about the fact that I finished college in 3 years with an accounting degree, okay? And I didn't have a social life in those 3 years because that's all I could afford to go to is 3 years. And I busted my hump for those 3 years. And then I graduated and I spent 12 years at Arthur Andersen, 12 years where I never had an in-town job. 12 years where the neighbors thought I was my wife's weekend lover because I arrived on Friday night with a suitcase and left on Monday morning. They didn't even know we were married, okay? 12 years where I didn't see my children play their sports. I didn't see my children growing up because I was working 60 to 70 hours a week. 12 years where I worked every Saturday and a hell of a lot of Sundays. 12 years where I busted my hump. Okay? And after all those years of honing that skill, and then going to Northwestern and getting an MBA every weekend while my children were still young, my daughter would cry her eyes out because I was leaving again, but I would go once a week down to Northwestern every Friday night, come home Saturday night, because I was honing my skills, because I was getting better and better and better at what I wanted to do. And finally, after all those years of sacrifice and all those years of work, I got called up to the majors. I was made a CEO. And what is the average life of a CEO in an American public company? 7 years. 3 to 5 in sports, it's 7. After 7 years, you're out. You're dumped on the trash pile. So after a lifetime of sacrifice, you've got 7 years to make the big bucks. 7 years to make a payback for all of that hard work. And in those 7 years, the first thing somebody says is, you're being overpaid. You're being overpaid. And the guy who says it is some bum who binge drank and got lucky in college, okay, because he was out there partying all the time, and who never really applied himself, and he's mad because he's only making 40 grand a year or 50 grand a year, and you're making millions as a CEO. And is that fair? Is that a fair criticism? Is it a fair analogy? Not only that, what I'm amazed at is you guys have no problem with what you pay for a sports ticket. You don't care that those basketball players are making multi-million-dollar contracts, that the baseball players are playing millions. You don't care that some guy who gets up on stage and raps, he ain't even singing. He's doing poetry, okay? It's not even singing. He's talking, all right? And he's making millions from his rap records. You're buying well, you don't buy records anymore. You're downloading them probably illegally for free, okay? But you're going to his concerts, you're paying the incredible prices for his tickets, you got no problem with that. And you know what you got to ask yourself is, how many people is he employing? Is that guy employing 1,500 families? Is that guy running a company that is making work for 1,500 families? No, he's making money for himself up on this stage. Maybe a few roadies who are so drugged out they don't even know what's going on, okay? That's all he's really doing, and you got no problem paying him that kind of money, but the CEO of a major company, oh, well, we can't give that guy big bucks. In fact, the SEC went so far as to say, all right, we want every company to publish in their proxy statements every year the total compensation of the 5 highest paid people in the company. And all the companies said, okay, so you can go online, you can find my pay. It's out there. We're all published. The idea was we were going to be shamed into cutting our pay because, oh my God, we don't want people to see how much we make. I could care less. But they required that. But then they said they put in what was called the Couric rule. The Couric rule. You know who Couric was? That one you got? Okay. Couric was the highest paid person at NBC at that time. And they said, well, wait. We're not talking about people like Couric. She deserves that money, okay? We're talking about the executives. So they made an exception that you don't have to put in the pay of anybody who's considered talent. You just have to put in the pay of those evil executives of the company. So they excluded Couric and all of the high-paid performers from the proxies, because they said, you shareholders, you don't care about that. You don't care that Katie Couric is paid a lot of money. You care that the CEO and the CFO are paid a lot of money. In their arrogance, they put that rule out there. So the question is, am I overpaid? I don't know. You decide. But when you hear these people make these comments, you have to think about what it really means. Can I answer other questions? I'd really like to address questions you might have. You don't get very often when you get a CEO of a public company who's willing to come in here and give you some honest answers to your questions. This is your chance to take me on. I mean, you guys, a lot of you are liberal leaning because you're in college, and you know what they say, anybody under 40 who is not a liberal has no heart, and anybody over 40 who's not a conservative has no head. So. Oh, God. It's the one question you guys ask that I dread. His question is, was all that sacrifice worth it? Okay. I'll answer it in a few ways. I would not want my son or daughter to do it. Okay? I would discourage them. Pardon? Well, I mean, I wouldn't. What I had to sacrifice in my life looking back, I'm happy I did it. I'm glad I am where I am. I'm glad I'm able to have the impact that I do on my company, on my community, on my family, and everybody else. I just don't think I would want my son to, or my daughter to go through that, okay? The only real regret I've got is that my health didn't hold up. About 2.5 years ago, I had a stroke. I still have one artery completely blocked. I know, what a surprise, me, a stroke, Mr. Low Key. I have one artery completely blocked. I'm 58 years old. Questionable whether I'll ever see 70, okay? So, you know, my time is ticking out. I raced a little too hard for the gold. I went a little bit too hard and I ran myself down. I've done some things since the stroke to try and actually they told me when I had the stroke I wouldn't walk again. I'd be on a walker the rest of my life. So I lucked out on that one, and I've done some things. I see a personal trainer. I do things to keep in shape. I've gotten in better shape. I won't give up drinking. There are some things I would rather die for, okay? I'm sorry. I went to see, they sent me to see a nutritionist. And she says, all right, here's the deal. She says, I said, well, first off, I said, they told me I got type 2 diabetes. And she goes, that's right. And I said, so on a scale of 1 to 10, I got a 2. That's not too bad, right? And she goes, there is no scale of 1 to 10. There's type 1 and type 2. And I said, well, I got the good kind. She goes, no, there is no good kind. Type 1, type 2, they're both bad. And I said, well, what does this mean? She said, well, okay, no beer, no wine, no brandy, no whiskey. She says, no scotch. I'm like, I might as well just go in the bathroom now and hang myself. Then she says, but you can drink gin, vodka, tequila. I said, sold. I'm a happy man, okay? I am the martini man. Martinis, I can go. So you can usually find me on a Friday or a Saturday night at a bar called Fire on Water on Water Street. And in fact, all the people in Milwaukee know this, that I'm usually at the end of the bar on Friday and Saturday night enjoying my martinis. So it's a good place to catch me. My son owns the bar, so it's a fun place. So anyone who's over 21, it's a fun place. So if you're over 21, you can visit the place. But so really, my answer to the best answer I can give to that question is I regret that my health didn't hold up more. So maybe I regret charging a little as hard as I did. But then again, I don't know if I would have gotten where I am without the charging. Secondly, for me, I would do it all again. I made the decisions I made. It was kind of the best thing I felt I could do, and it was the best use of my life, and I feel good about what I've accomplished. Wouldn't necessarily recommend it to other people. It's tough. No, so it's about the best I can answer for you. So, that's a downer. Other questions?
I have one.
Yeah.
So I would say that you've had a fairly successful career.
Yeah.
Based off your
Monetarily, yeah.
definitely, and plus
And does anything else really count? Oh, I'm sorry.
and your community involvement
Yeah.
and giving back to Whitewater. So I guess you're at the point in your life maybe where are you at a standstill? Do you still have goals that you want to accomplish?
Yeah.
What are your next steps? Are you looking at retirement right now?
I've got, I'm 58. They often ask me, what are your plans? Of course, the board of directors always wants to know what the plan is, because I am grooming some younger people at my office to take over for me. And the question is, what's the timeline? Right now, my timeline says I'd like to go 7 years. I'd like to retire at 65 if my health holds up, all right? I told the other class this morning that I went through a psychological thing a while back, too, where I got to the point where I realized that I had all the money I needed to retire quite comfortably for the rest of my life, me and my wife. And therefore, every day when I went to work, I was just making money for my children, okay? And they've really managed to piss me off a lot, okay? And so I'm like, why am I even going to work? I'm just making money for these ungrateful little, you know, it doesn't make any sense to me, okay? So I was really having trouble getting motivated and getting out of bed in the morning. Then my son gave me a granddaughter, okay? And that is, grandchildren are God's reward for not killing your kids, all right? It is absolutely unconditional love. And the beautiful thing is, she hasn't pissed me off yet, okay, because she hasn't become a teenage girl yet, okay? And so I've got a reason to go to work in the morning. I'm making money for my granddaughter. This I can do, okay? Now I got something to focus on. But in all seriousness, if I have 7 years left in my career, there are certain things I would still like to accomplish. I've got the Water Council up and running. I'd like to get the Water Council building going and get that well stabilized. I think I can get it there. I think I'm starting to get involved in a lot of political hot topics. Tomorrow I'll go to the state senate and testify on the Milwaukee County restructuring. There's the Milwaukee residency thing. So I'm being asked to wade in on a lot of these things. So I'm starting to get involved in those. As one advisor told me, he said, Rich, it's time to be the old lion and not the young lion. So I'm starting to become the old lion where people are saying, would like you to come and give your opinion on this, instead of necessarily rolling up my sleeves and trying to do everything. So I'm seeing myself move into a little bit of a different phase of my life. One of the concerns I have is that there was a time in America, a time that you guys would never have known, but there was a time in America when the corporate leaders of America provided the bulk of the leadership that our communities needed. The corporate leaders were the visionaries. They were the ones who drove the change. They were the ones who built Miller Park. They were the ones who built our freeway system. They were the ones who built our cultural assets. They were the ones who built our park systems and our lakefronts and all of these wonderful things. They were the ones who built these universities. They were the driving force behind our communities. And then we went through this period of time with Enron and things like this where CEOs were doing the perp walk and suddenly in America the psyche went from wealthy CEOs are people to be admired and listened to wealthy CEOs are somehow evil because nobody gets wealthy without being greedy and finding some way they're evil. And so the psyche in America has turned against us. And the response of the CEOs in America has been the worst possible thing that could ever happen to our country. They've all gone to ground. They've dropped their heads and said, I'm not going to give speeches. I'm not going to be out there talking to the state senate. I'm not going to be out there in the newspapers and on the camera telling people how our community should be run, because every time I do, these protesters show up and start criticizing me for how much money I'm making, and they boycott my company, and they threaten all this stuff. So screw it. We're just going to quietly go in our offices, shut the door, and continue to run our businesses and make our money. It's been devastating to our communities. It's been devastating, because all that really leaves then is our political leaders, our elected leaders, and they do not have the political will to make some of these decisions. And so there is a definite lack of leadership in most of our communities because we don't have those leaders anymore. I think that I got a shot, at least in the Milwaukee community, of turning that around. And I might not be able to do it with my fellow CEOs at the age they're at, but I'm planting seeds under them. And I believe that it's the next level coming up, that if I can convince them that you don't have to hide from the public, you don't have to apologize for being wealthy, there's nothing wrong with making money, there's nothing wrong. Everybody says, well, small businesses are good, but big businesses are bad. What does every small business want to be? A big business, okay? So why, this total disconnect, somehow we got to get over this disconnect, and we need these people to step out of the shadows. I've tried with my fellow CEOs, they won't, okay? But I think the level below us might, and I think we've got a shot at it. That's what I'd like to accomplish in the next 7 years. After that, I can kick the mortal coil. Won't bother me in the least. Yeah? What was the biggest mistake you made as a CEO? The biggest mistake I made as CEO, I bought a company in France. I actually thought I could get the French to work. Jesus Christ. And I ended up closing the company and firing all the employees, about 120 employees. The mistake I made, though, in retrospect, is that I did not adequately understand the French culture. I think if I had developed a better understanding of the French culture, that plant would exist, that company would exist, and those people would still have jobs. And I'm being very honest with you. I think I screwed up. So I've worked very hard since then when I buy a company to really understand the culture in the country. I just bought one I bought one last year in Racine, so I had to understand the culture of Racine. Even a little bit different from France. But I bought one in Bern, Switzerland, and I bought one before that in Phoenix, and I bought one before that in Malaysia. So in each case, I've really taken the extra effort to learn the culture because I think that was my mistake. It was 10 years ago I made the mistake. I was early in my career. I had just become a CEO. I was pretty arrogant, and I thought I could pull it off, and I didn't. I blew it big time. And the worst part of my job, people ask me what the worst part of my job is. My worst part of my job is firing somebody who's done nothing wrong. It's unpleasant. I have no problem firing somebody who's screwed up. I have no problem firing somebody who's in over their head. They should have never had this job. They don't have the capability for it. I don't even have a problem firing somebody who originally was good at their job, but the company's grown and they can no longer handle it. I got no problem with any of those. They need to go to a smaller company where their skills are going to be more appropriate. I got a problem firing somebody who's good at their job, and I have to fire them anyway because the market went bad on me. I mean, I've had to close plants. I closed a plant in Mattapoisett, Massachusetts, simply because the market went bad on me. I had no choice. I had to consolidate that plant with my Tulsa plant. I offered all the employees jobs in Tulsa. Only 2 took them. I mean, going from Martha's Vineyard to Tulsa is kind of a culture shock. Only 2 took the jobs, but I had to fire all the rest of them. I had to close the plant in Rio Rico, Arizona, fire all the employees. I was moving the plant across the border to Arizona, or into Mexico. I did that because I couldn't compete anymore. The salaries were too high. By going into Mexico, the salaries would be lower, and I'd be able to compete. So, I don't like firing people who have done nothing. Those people did nothing wrong. It's just that the external forces are what caught me. I don't consider it unethical. I do what I've got to do. I remind people, anybody here from West Bend? West Bend area? It's a city in Wisconsin. Yeah? Okay. Are you from the West Bend area? There is a company in West Bend, I don't know if you remember this, called Amity Leather. Okay, how quickly did I forget. Okay, about 15 years ago, Amity Leather was the largest employer in West Bend. And about 15 years ago, all of the leather companies relocated in the United States to Taiwan. And Amity Leather was still in West Bend, and the CEO of Amity Leather got up and said, "We at Amity Leather are keeping every one of these good-paying union jobs right here in West Bend. We're not moving one job to Taiwan like our competitors have." The city went nuts. They cheered this guy. He was the grand marshal of the parade. He was on the front page of the newspaper. The mayor gave him the key to the city. They absolutely loved this guy. 3 years later, this guy retired, okay? And 2 years after that, Amity Leather filed bankruptcy. Everybody at the company lost their jobs, and the company no longer exists. And I contend, because I knew this guy, and I knew his CFO. And the CFO was the one who turned out the lights. He was the last one to leave the building. And I contend that son of a knew exactly what he was doing. He knew that company was going to go under because of that decision. But he was 3 years from retirement, and he didn't want to take the heat. He wanted to retire in the community, and he didn't want to be the bad guy because his kids and grandkids were in that community, and he didn't want to take the heat. So he made the decision to not move the jobs out of West Bend, to not make any of the tough decisions, and it cost him his whole damn company. And instead of moving 200-300 jobs out of West Bend, 800 people lost their jobs. 800 people, because he didn't have the brass gonads to do what was necessary to be done. And I say, look, I will make those tough decisions. It's why I get paid the big bucks, okay? I will make the tough decisions. I will fire the people. I will move the plants. I will do all that stuff. But you know what? It's your fault. It's not mine. And I know some of you were in my class this morning, but let's talk about this, okay? Over the course of the last 10 years, I've moved 300 jobs from Milwaukee to Mexico, okay? Fired the people in Milwaukee, hired people in Mexico to take their jobs. And people go, wow, that's terrible. But you know what? we took a vote in this country. We took a vote and we asked everybody in America, do you want American CEOs to fire American workers and move their jobs to Mexico or to China? And everybody voted, yes. It was unanimous. And you all voted. Do you remember voting? You don't remember voting. Well, we'll do a vote right now. We can do it right now. Well, this is easy. We'll do it now, okay? If you want American CEOs to fire American workers and move their jobs to Mexico, raise your hand. If you don't want us to do it, don't raise your hand. You ready? Okay. How many of you have ever bought anything at a Walmart? Raise your hand. And there is your vote. Every day you guys vote with your pocketbooks. Every day you go in and buy the Chinese-made goods and the Mexican-made goods, and you don't buy the American-made goods because they cost more. Not only that, you not only don't buy the American-made goods, you don't even ask because you don't care. You don't care where they're made. You want the cheapest product. So you don't even ask. And then you have the gall to say to guys like me, you shouldn't be moving these workers to Mexico. You're the ones forcing me to move the workers to Mexico. I'm just carrying out your wishes. All right? I don't mind doing your dirty laundry, but don't complain that my hands stink. It's your stink on my hands. Okay? And so for you to go and make these economic decisions, which you really don't care about, okay, and then expect the rest of us to care and somehow find magic ways to save those jobs, it just ain't going to happen. So I got no problem doing it, but just recognize you're the ones making the economic decisions. You're the ones that are driving it. Was I answering a question? I don't even know anymore. So, yes?
What would you say your greatest attribute was on your path to becoming a CEO, and how much depended on who you knew?
That's a very good question. So let me first start with the greatest attribute. I made a few really good decisions in my career. The number one decision was I married well, okay? Never in your life underestimate the value of a really good partner, okay? And I'm talking about, you know, forget about all this love, okay? I'm talking about finding someone who shares your values, your goals, your interests, and you can say, you know what, this is where I want to go, and you got another person standing at your side who says, I'm going to help you get there. Partnership is a wonderful thing. Finding the right partner in life is really important. My wife is probably one of my greatest attributes. She's a fantastic corporate wife. We will be at a party. We'll, you know, two people will come walking across. She'll lean over and she'll say, Bill and Sue, their kids are Timmy and Chrissy. And I'll say, Bill, how the hell are you? Sue, it's so good to see you. How are Timmy and Chrissy? Oh, they're great, wonderful. And these people walk away going, that Meeusen, man, he knows everybody. He's so good. He cares. He really cares. I have no idea. I didn't even know those people worked for me. So don't underestimate the value of a good corporate wife, okay, or a good corporate spouse, whichever side. So that's number one. But the second part of your question, which was, you asked? Yes. I love this question. Because they say it's not what you know, it's who you know. Both are wrong. It's not what you know, and it's not who you know. It's what you do for who you know. There was a movie, I'm going to probably, you guys are all going to look, a movie called The Godfather. Please tell me you've seen, okay. And in it there was a line that everybody quoted, okay? And everybody said, oh, you know, that's the greatest line ever. I went and saw The Godfather, and I heard one line out of that movie that just hit me like a ton of bricks and stuck with me. And it wasn't the line everybody thinks about, which is, I'm going to make him an offer he can't refuse. You've heard that line, okay? Which is one of the greatest catchphrase, or one of AFI's greatest 100 quotes in movies. I think, frankly, my dear, I don't give a damn was number one. If you don't know what that's from, shame on you. Gone with the Wind, by the way. The line he said, Marlon Brando was Vito Corleone, he was a godfather, and he had reached the top of his chosen profession. And he said, he was gathered with the other 5 families, and he said, tell me, when did I ever refuse an accommodation? That's what he asked him. He said, when did I ever refuse an accommodation? And I thought to myself, I was a young man watching that movie, I think I saw it here on campus. I watched it, and I thought, here was a man who had reached the top of his chosen profession, a brutal and bloody profession, but it was still the top of his chosen profession, and he had gotten there by never refusing an accommodation. He did favors for people. He built his career on favors he did. It's not what you know, and it's not who you know. It's what you do for who you know. And that's how I built my career. I went out and started doing favors for people. And even in that movie, The Godfather, he says to somebody, I'm going to do you this favor. Now, he was actually going to hunt down and kill some guys for him, so it was pretty bloody and brutal. But he said, I'm going to do you this favor. And someday, and that day may never come, but someday I may come and ask for that favor to be repaid. Are you willing to accept those terms? And the guy said, yeah. So I thought to myself, what if you built your entire career doing favors for people, and the vast majority of them would never get repaid? But think about the network you would build. Everybody tells you to build a network. You don't build a network when you need a network. You build a network when you don't need a network. And you build a network, you don't build a network by meeting people and collecting their contact information. I was going to say Rolodex. In your contacts things, Rolodex, that's an old term. You do face page or Spacebook, whatever. Okay, whatever it is you. Okay, you don't build your contacts by just dumping names in there. You build your contacts you build your network by doing favors for people that can hopefully be returned. That's how you build a network. And I get so frustrated, like some 30-year-old guy will come to me and say, you know, I just got let go from my job, so I'm trying to build a network. And what I'd like to do is tap into your network. Well, first off, why would I let you tap into my network, okay? You haven't done shit for me. I don't know you. Why would I help you find a job, all right? Secondly, what have you been doing for the since you got out of college? All right, you're 30 years old, you have no network? So you thought somehow becoming a level 12 Druid Night Elf in World of Warcraft would give you contacts in the business world? I mean, this was your business plan? This was your network development plan? For Christ's sake, kid, why weren't you out doing things? What organizations did you volunteer for, okay? Were you playing softball with people where you could get to know them? Were you doing anything in the evenings other than exercising your thumbs, all right? That's how you build a network. When I was a young man at Arthur Andersen, there was a partner there that I really respected, and I respect to this day, Dale Kent. He's the CFO at West Bend Insurance Company, where my son works, by the way. Favor. And Dale was a partner I admired, and I really wanted to be mentored by Dale. You don't walk into somebody's office and say, hi, mentor me, okay? But I knew Dale was on the board of directors of the Arthritis Foundation. So I walked into the Arthritis Foundation, age 23 or whatever, and I said, I'm a CPA with Arthur Andersen. I would like to volunteer for you. What can I do? And they said, well, we got a fundraiser coming up. It's a bike ride. We need somebody out with a flag on the street. I stood on the damn street with a flag, directed traffic. The next year they said to me, well, would you like to help us count all the money and be in charge of the money? You're a CPA. I said, fine. So I took charge of that. The next year they said to me, would you like to join our committee that runs the bike ride? I said, yeah. So the next year I joined the committee that ran the bike ride. I did that for a couple of years, proved that I had some capability, and eventually they said, you know, we could really use you on our audit committee. I joined their audit committee. And after a few years, they made me treasurer of the organization, and there I was sitting at the board table next to Dale Kent, the guy that I wanted to get to know. From Dale Kent's point of view, I did him a favor. This was an organization he loved, and he was working on growing, and he was working on improving, and I came in and volunteered to help him. That's how you build a network. That's how you start making these relationships. When I left Zenith Sintered Products, I've only had 3 jobs. You guys will have an average of 7 to 10, something like that during your career, but 3 in my lifetime. When I left my second job and decided to start looking for a job, I sent out 88 resumes, okay? And they were all people that I had done favors for. And I sent out these resumes, and within 1 week, I had 3 job interviews, and one of them was Badger, and I ended up taking the job. And I talked to Jim Forbes, the guy, my predecessor, who hired me, and I said, you know, what made you decide to hire me? And he said, oh, I had made that decision before you walked into my office. He said, and excuse the vulgarity here, but this is the way we talk, he said, anything short of desk, you would have been hired, okay? Because he said, when I got your resume, I picked up the phone and I made 3 phone calls to 3 people from who I knew you. If you worked at Arthur Andersen, you must know Dale Kent. I called Dale Kent. If you know this guy, you must know, and bang, 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 he made 3 phone calls. When he hung up the 3rd phone call, he said, I found my guy. He was done. All right? All 3 were people that I had done favors for. That's how you build a network. That's what's so important. Does that answer your question? It's not what you know, and it's not who you know. It's what you do for who you know. So, other questions I can answer? Yes?
I was just going to ask, I don't know if you're allowed to talk about the most challenging or ethical situation you've had to go through as a CEO.
Yeah.
Confronting other
generally at Badger Meter, at any company you're going to run into ethical situations. My people know that I don't want them walking the ethical line. I want them so damn far from that line that they can't even see it. I want them nowhere near that line. And if they start seeing that ethical line, they need to bring me in. If anybody's going to do something questionable ethically, it's going to be me, all right? Because ultimately, if they do something questionable, it's going to probably land on my desk. And I'm going to come back to my example in just a second. Don't let me forget, okay? You got to remember quick lubes. Quick lubes. Remember quick lubes for me, because I'll forget, okay? But before I go on to that, now I forgot where I was going to go. Okay, I'm going to do the quick lubes, okay? Got it. Old age is a terrible thing, all right? Anyway, so at Badger Meter, they called me and said, we have a problem. And the problem was we make the meters at Quick Lubes. When you go in there to get your oil changed, they take that pistol grip thing, they set it for 5 quarts, and they pull the handle, and it pumps 5 quarts in, okay? You guys ever go into Quick Lubes? You know what I'm talking about? You just toss your keys and come back later. How do you change your oil? Okay, all right. They have it looks like a gas pump handle, okay? And they put the oil in, they set it for 5 quarts, and they pull the handle, and when it gets 5 quarts, it stops. We make most of those in the world. And so we had a problem because for about 3 or 4 months, we shipped those, and all the ones that were supposed to be in quarts were actually in liters, okay? So the end result was that it would get to what it thought was 5 quarts when really it wasn't 5 quarts. It was less. And so they said, we're going to have to recall 3,000 of these meters. It's going to be very expensive. We're going to have to rip them out of all these garages. We're going to have to pay a fortune. And worse yet, it's probably going to damage the brand. We're going to lose this business. The entire business is going to go under. Probably about 120 employees, all going to lose their job because of this error that was made. So I said, all right, let me think on it. And that night, I went to a Quick Lube place. And I went in and I said to the guy, do you mind if I just stand here and watch how you do an oil change once? And he goes, I don't care. Some high school kid, he doesn't care. So he takes that pistol thing and he sets it for 5 quarts and he pumps it in there. And when it stops, what does he do next? What do you think he does next? No, I mean, he doesn't just hang it up. He takes out the dipstick and he checks to see how much oil is in there. And he looks at it and goes, oh, and he puts some more in. Now, do they charge the customer for that extra bit of oil? No, it's a flat fee to change your oil. They don't charge him anything more. My point was they aren't relying on my meter to tell them that the crankcase is full of oil. They're checking it at the end. Everybody checks it at the end. Therefore, that error in the meter was A, not blowing up anybody's car engine, was B, not causing anybody to pay more for oil than they should have, was C, not affecting my customer. They weren't selling oil for free, okay? So it had very little impact. So I came back and said, we're not doing a recall. We're just going to shut our mouths. We're going to let them sit out there. We're going to fix it, and all the ones we ship in the future will be okay, but we're going to let those 3,000 sit out there. Now, you may say I was ethically wrong. You may have made a different decision, right? I mean, that's one where it's a line. But basically, I sold a product that was defective, but the defect had no impact on the customer or the customer's customer. So should I have done a recall or not? I don't know. But that was the call I made, and that was probably the most difficult one I did. I lost sleep that night, thinking about what to do. You know, anybody want to, I mean, we can argue about it, but how do you feel about it? You asked the question, how do you feel about it?
No, I agree with you 100%. I have a couple neighbors who work in a similar business as you, and I think they would have done the same thing. But did you ever notify them that there was a defect in your product, or did you just let it?
Because if I would have, they would have insisted I take them all back and give them new ones. Because the average garage would say, well, this thing's warranted for 5 years. It's 4 years old. I can get a brand new one. So take this one and send me a new one. You know, so economically, it would have been a huge hit. And frankly, like I say, I think it would have caused such a brand hit on the brand that we would have lost the business. It would have gone away. And I didn't want to do that. So I don't know. At a different point in my life, I might have made a different decision. But at that point in my life, that was the decision I made. So Like I said, I'll give you guys honest answers to your questions here. So, other questions I can answer. Doesn't have to be just about ethics, can be about anything. Yeah.
You talked about your time at Arthur Andersen and when you were able to build your network there. Do you ever regret choosing to go public versus private or some other path for your first kind of real accounting job?
You mean choosing to go with a public company instead of, no, actually, I tend to think that the public accounting firms, if your goal is to continue your education, learn as much as possible, and to increase your market value, there's no place that happens faster than at the public accounting firms. It's simply because at a public accounting firm, you get exposure to so many different companies. And yes, it's a little bit of a harder lifestyle, okay, initially, although they've tampered that down quite a bit. These firms have taken their feet off the accelerator. I don't think the lifestyle is nearly what it was like when I was there. But you do work long hours at times, and it is a little more demanding. But as a result, you learn a lot faster. So I thought it was a great move. I probably each time I quit, the 2 jobs I quit because in the last year I was there, I looked back and realized I learned nothing. If you stop learning, it's time to move on. Also, it's very important to pick your boss. I mean, in one of the firms, my boss, they retired him early and they made somebody else my boss. I had no respect for the guy. I quit that day. Picking your boss is very important. I quit and I had 2 children at home and a very large mortgage. And I came home and told my wife I just quit my job. And she was a little shocked by that. But I had something in my back pocket that I knew was my ace in the hole. And that was those 88 names. And a track record that was very powerful. So I was fairly confident I'd find something. And in fact, from my last day at Zenith to my first day at Badger Meter, I had 8 days off. Took the family on a trip to Cudahy. Yeah, did the McDonald's drive-through. It was great. Took the whole 8 days off. It's the only time in my life I didn't have a job. The only time. From the time I was about 14, yeah. Other questions I can answer. Yeah.
Where do you think you picked up this motivation and determination to do well? Is it just how you were raised or education?
That's Whitewater. I'd love to say Whitewater. That's a question. It's a question for the ages. My father was an abusive alcoholic, beat the shit out of me as a kid. By today's standards, he'd probably be in jail. Died young. He drank himself to death, and I don't mourn him at all. That probably had a big impact on me. The shrinks would love to get their hands on me, but I won't let them. They want to. Yeah, those guys are wacko anyway. My wife has a degree in psychology. When I was in Whitewater, we called that the study of the obvious by the incompetent. So I don't let them. So I don't know if that was part of the motivation that was behind me, or if it was other things. But frankly, I've always been a little mercenary. I joined the Boy Scouts, and when I got promoted from tenderfoot to second class, my scoutmaster told me there was no money involved. I pointed out to him that even the Nobel Peace Prize has a certain cash sum associated with it, and I felt there should be money in these awards. He said no, and I said, well, then I'm out of scouting. I'm done. So I was going through a very mercenary point in my life. So it's just, it is who I am. I mean, I feel like it's just in my makeup. I tend to want to accomplish a lot. I want to get a lot of things done. I figure I got about 12 years left on Earth. I figure I got a shot at making some changes. I want to make the changes before I go. And then I can sleep the big sleep. Death is just I always say sleeping is the second greatest form of relaxation, because even in sleeping, your dreams bother you. Death, that's the ultimate form of relaxation. So, doesn't bother me in the least. Doesn't bother me in the least. So yeah, I'm a little weird that way. So other things I can answer. You know what? I had a good, and I've got a little bit of time. I want to do this because I had a class last year somebody asked me, they said, when you interview people, what kind of questions do you ask? So, but you have to understand, the only people I interview are vice presidents who have been in the business world for 40 years or 30 years, and they are able to handle these kinds of questions. So I'll share them with you because I think you might find it of interest as to what does happen at that level. But let's start at your level for just a second, okay? A bad interviewer will ask you, so what's your greatest weakness? That's a question. It's a stupid question that interviewers should be fired, all right? Because they've been asking that question for decades, and everybody knows you take a strength and turn it into weakness. I just care too much. That's my biggest weakness. You know, I work too hard. You know, you hire me, I'm going to be working so hard for you. That's my real weakness. I mean, it's just a bullshit question deserves a answer. Have the bullshit answer ready, okay? But the best thing you can do going into an interview, the best interviewers, you want 5 stories. You need to come up with 5 stories. And you need to have those stories so well rehearsed and so practiced and so memorized that you can use those 5 stories to answer almost any question. Any question that's asked, you can pull one of the 5 out. And they should be 5 interesting, engaging stories. And the 5 stories are going to be a personal success in your life, something you're proud of, that you accomplished in your personal life that you feel really good about. A personal challenge in your life, something that was very difficult that maybe you had to overcome, okay? A professional success in your life and a professional challenge. And then the last one, tell me something interesting about yourself. If you can pull out those 5, and if you can practice them and rehearse them, you will do very well in job interviews. Now you're sitting there thinking, well, I'm not in the professional world yet. I don't have a professional success. Yeah, but you've probably had some opportunity. I don't care if it was in Girl Scouts or in some organization here at Whitewater. You've had some opportunity to be part of an organization. And you should be able to draw from that experience one example of where you did something, maybe in a leadership role, where you had an opportunity to bring others along and to get the best out of other people. Cite that, okay? Personally, you know, maybe you had some issue in your life, or you had some problem, or maybe you went and volunteered somewhere and you felt really good about what you accomplished. You want to have those 5 stories. And you got to have 5. Because they're going to hit you with questions, and then they can sit there and say, well, what makes you think that you could come into my marketing department and really make a difference? Well, let me tell you about a difference I made at the Whitewater organization, okay? That's how you can quickly answer, because you're going to get a question like that and you're going to freeze. What makes you think you can improve my marketing department? You don't want to do that. You want to be right there. You want to take story number 3. Okay, this is a perfect question for story number 3, and roll that sucker out. So that's what I advise you on preparing for job interviews. Now, let's talk about the types of questions I ask, okay? So if I'm interviewing somebody for a CEO role, for a vice president role. Now, bear in mind, I'm interviewing somebody who's been in the business world a long time. They're very polished, they're very smooth. They've got their 5 stories down pat. They've got 5 stories and more. They can blow smoke up my ass all day, okay? They got no problem, all right? So I'm going to ask a question like this, and I picked on you guys, now I'm pick on you, okay? What town are you from? Blue Mound. Blue Mound, Wisconsin. Mm-hmm. Okay. How many windows do you think there are in Blue Mound? I don't know, 1,000. 1,000. How do you get 1,000?
It's a small town.
It's a small town, so you just picked 1,000.
Yep.
That was it. Okay. Mm-hmm. How many people do you think there are in Blue Mound?
300.
300. So you think there's 3 windows per person in the town of Blue Mound?
Sure.
Weird houses, don't you think? I mean, the entire house has only 3 windows?
I guess.
Okay, so what I'm after here is I'm not after an answer because I don't know how many windows there are in Blue Mound, and I don't care how many windows are in Blue Mound. What am I looking for? What?
Logic?
Logic. I want to know how you think. I want to know how analytical you are. Yeah? Well, not always confidence, because I don't necessarily want her to say 1,000 and then argue come hell or high water that there's only 3 windows in a house in Blue Mound, okay? Because she knows she made a mistake and she ain't going to back down. But it tells me something about her, okay? Now, here's what I get when I ask a high-level VP that question. First off, nobody's going to say, I don't know, okay? And nobody's going to pull a number out of their ass like 1,000, okay? And I'm not being critical of you. I mean, you're not. 30 years from now, come back to see me. You'll have a better answer, okay? Nobody's going to give me that. Here's what I'm going to get. I'm going to get, well, my hometown has 300 people in it. Nah, there's maybe 20 windows in the average house, okay? So I'm going to say, you know, that there's 6,000 windows in the town of Blue Mound. I might also get somebody who immediately looks for more information, okay? How many windows do you think there are in your hometown? Including cars? Makes a big freaking difference, doesn't it? Including cars, okay? So that's an interesting question. So right away, that's a person who digs for more information before they even start the thought process of heading down. But I want to know what thought process you use to accomplish that. I might turn to you and just say, why, tell me, why do you think manhole covers are round?
I have not a clue.
Not a clue. There's 8 possible answers. Want to take a shot?
So certain people and supplies can fit down there when necessary?
So certain people can fit down there. Well, the human body is basically round in shape and fitting down there. That's probably a good answer. Why else do you think manhole covers are round? Imagine what they do. They lift the thing up and they move it out of the way, right?
Yep. Roll it.
Ah, they can roll it if it's round. If it's square, they can't roll it, right? Any other geometric shape would fall in. Any other geometric shape would fall in. It's the only shape that won't fall in the hole. And there's 5 other questions, okay? The smart-ass one that I always get is, well, because manholes are round. Duh! Pretty damn good answer, though, when you think about it. Okay. Those are the types of questions I ask because I don't need to ask you about your career. I don't need to ask you about your education. Jesus, you would not be sitting in my office if you weren't qualified for this job. What I want to know is, are you going to fit into this company? Are you going to blow smoke up my ass? Are you going to make stupid, dumb decisions off the cuff? Or are you going to dig for the right amount of information? Are you going to think things through logically? That's what I want to know at that level. And ultimately, I take you to lunch. And I take you to lunch, and I take you to a bad lunch, a really bad lunch. I call a friend of mine who owns a restaurant, and I say, I'm bringing in a candidate, and I want him to have a bad lunch. He says, you got it. He knows exactly what I want. You come in, we sit down, I order a Diet Coke, you order a Sprite, they bring me a Diet Coke, and they bring you a Coke. Whatever you order, they're going to bring the wrong thing, all right? I order my food comes, yours doesn't. 10 minutes later, your food comes, it's wrong. It's the wrong food, okay? This goes on and on and on, all right? And what am I looking for? Standing up for yourself. What? Do they get mad or just deal with it? The way a person treats a waiter will often tell you how they're going to treat their employees. That's what it tells me. Even though they're nincompoops. Maybe you treat them politely, okay? Or do you just say, okay, it's the wrong thing, but I'm going to drink it anyway? Or do you call her over and say, excuse me, I ordered a Sprite, you brought me a Coke, could you give me a Sprite? Thank you so much. I mean, you know, do you bring it to their attention? Are you the kind of person that's going to let your employees walk all over you, or are you going to stand up for yourself? But the most important, and another thing is, when my meal comes and yours doesn't, are you going to make me sit there and wait for your damn meal, or are you going to tell me to go ahead and eat? How considerate are you? Okay? And ultimately, the most important question is the one I ask on the way out the door. Because this is the one that often determines whether I hire you or not. On the way out the door, I say, God, I just love this place. What did you think? What do you say?
I didn't care for it.
I got a place to take you.
Yeah. You know, what a lot of people will say is, you know, the food was okay. Service was kind of screwed up. She had a lot of problems today, okay? But you'd be amazed at how many people will say, when the CEO says, I love this place, what do you think? You'd be amazed how many people say, oh, it's great. It's great. All right, this is an employee who's going to be blowing smoke up my ass for the rest of my life if I hire this guy. So those are the types of things I ask in interviews. You won't have to deal with this for decades. However, I will tell you, if you go for an interview, they take you to lunch, they're watching you. They are watching you. Everything in an interview tells them something about you. So be very careful. Other questions I can answer. I'm sharing some deep, dark corporate secrets here with you guys. Anything else I can answer? You know, I'll leave you with one other thought, okay? And this is an important one, all right? We all, to some extent, we all cheat, steal, and lie, okay? You're all cheaters, you're all thieves, you all lie, okay? And it's part of who we are. It's what we do. Now, men have an excuse for lying. Women don't, okay? No, it's true. Men have been bred to lie by the women, okay? And well, it's true because if you think about it, okay, for thousands of years, okay, at some point in every marriage, the wife has said to the husband, does my butt look fat in this dress? And the husbands who answered honestly did not get to reproduce that night. But the husbands who lied got to reproduce. So what happened is, over thousands of years, the honesty gene that at one time existed in the male species got bred out. It was selective breeding, okay? They got knocked out of the gene pool. We gentlemen are all descended from the greatest line of liars in the history of mankind, okay? Our fathers, grandfathers, great-grandfathers, they all knew how to lie to women. It's what we do best. It's one of the things we're really good at. So at least we have an excuse for our lying, okay? But what I'll submit to you is that most people will cheat under certain circumstances. And there have to be three conditions, is what I've observed. The three conditions are, number one, that they believe they can get away with it. Number two, and this is like speeding over the speed limit. You know you can get away with it, okay? Number two is that you believe that the person you're damaging is not really a person. It's a faceless person. People will not necessarily steal from their friends, but they'll steal from the government. They'll cheat on their taxes. They'll steal from their insurance company by padding a claim, okay? So people will steal from a faceless entity, but not from somebody they know, all right? And number three is they have to feel like it's somehow justified. Yeah, I cheated on my taxes a little bit, but you know, the federal government charges me too much taxes anyway, and they waste my money, so it's justified. Yeah, I cheated on my insurance company, but the damn insurance company handled my claim really slowly, and they didn't do a good job, and they've been charging me these high premiums all this time anyway, all right? So those are the three conditions that exist. And if you allow in your company those three conditions to exist, there's a good chance your employees will rip you off. So what we do at Badger Meter is I try to fight those three conditions. Number one, you don't leave the keys to the corporate kingdom hanging out wherever you can get at them. You don't leave money sitting around. You don't make it easy. You want good, solid internal controls so that people know if I cheat, there's a good chance I'm going to get caught. That's number one. Number two, your corporation has to have a face. You have to make it personal. When I talk to my employees, I remind them, everybody in this room owns stock in the company. We are shareholders. We are all in this together. Now, if you think about ripping off the company, you are ripping off your fellow workers. I remind them that there are a lot of pension plans that have our stock. There are a lot of retired little old ladies who need our company to do well for them to be able to pay their pensions and have their health care. And all these people think about their grandmas and how important that is. And then number three is I try not to give them a reason to feel that there's some justification for cheating. We try to treat our employees well. We pay them well. We try to treat them fairly. That's the secret in corporate America. If you can maintain those three conditions, most of your employees will follow a very ethical line. It's a very important thing to think about. So, with that, it's 3:30.
Perfect.
Are we good?
So much.
All right, thank you, everybody.